Do you know that you are making genetic changes right now? Do you know that every time you forge a new connection neurologically in your brain, that somehow the DNA inside that nerve cell has to be signaled, and the moment it's signaled, in a matter of milliseconds, it grows a new branch and it reaches out and makes a connection? That's a genetic change. So then you would have to agree with me then, if you're not learning anything new or having any new experiences, for the most part, you're staying the same. Yes? And that the research with neuroplasticity says that your brain physically changes from every new thought you embrace, every new choice you make, every new experience you have, every new behavior you demonstrate, every new emotion that you can cultivate. There are chemical and physical changes that take place in your brain, which means you are changing your mind. How many people are with me? So when you change your brain, you change your mind. And when you change your mind, you change your brain. How many people understand? So then if you begin to learn information and you wired it in your brain, and then you keep revisiting that information, you start installing the neurological hardware. Yes? If you keep revisiting it and keep reviewing it and keep firing and keep wiring, the hardware program becomes a software program. Now it becomes an automatic software program because you practiced it enough times, it becomes automatic. How many people understand? And we call those neurological networks. And neurological networks are just gangs of neurons that have fired and wired together to form a community of neurosynaptic connections. And now, if you keep revisiting it, it becomes an automatic program. So you have a neural network to brush your teeth, to put on makeup, to talk a language, to complain, to drive your car. It just becomes an automatic program. You understand, yes? So the research shows that if you take a group of people who've never played the piano before, and you have them learn one-handed scales and chords, and you do a functional brain scan on their brain before the activity, and then you do a functional brain scan on their brain after the activity. If they come for 2 hours a day for 5 days, and they practice those scales and chords over and over again, at the end of 5 days, when you scan their brain, there are physical changes in their brain. They've grown new networks of neurons. How many people are with me? Well, that makes sense, right? You learn something new, you make new connections. Knowledge is the precursor to experience. Then once you begin to get some instruction, you get your body involved. And when you get your body involved, you have a new experience, and experience enriches the brain. More neurons begin to connect because experience is more sensory input. You with me? If you pay attention to what you're doing, you have to pay attention. And if you keep repeating it over and over again, the neurons begin to fire and wire, and you create a cluster of neurons to reflect your external activity. How many people understand? You got that, right? But if you take another group of people and you have them close their eyes and you have them mentally rehearse playing the scales and chords, at the end of 5 days, those people who rehearsed playing the scales and chords in their mind grow the same amount of circuits in their brain as if they were physically performing the activity. In other words, when you're truly focused and you're truly paying attention, the brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. And the brain literally believes that the thought is the experience, and without lifting a finger, it looks like they have been playing the piano for 5 days. In other words, it looks like the experience has already happened. How many people are with me? So it begs the question, what do you mentally rehearse all day long, and what do you physically demonstrate all day long? Because what you mentally rehearse all day long, think about, and what you physically rehearse, demonstrate, is who you are on a neurological level. How many people are with me? So then, if you're rehearsing a new way of being then, and you continuously visit what it would be like to be that person, just like the piano players, you're installing the neurological hardware ahead of the experience. You with me? If you keep repeating the experience over and over again, in your mind, the hardware program becomes a software program. It becomes a new neurological network, which is an automatic program, which becomes part of your new identity. How many people are with me? A little nudge. You got that, yes? Yes? So when I say to my daughter, you can't get up from your meditation until you feel like you just shopped your brains out. She says, no problem. Because she's going to have a great experience in there, and she's going to emotionally give her body a taste of the future. And she's going to get up like it already is done. You understand, yes? So then you may say to me, well, that's really good dinner conversation, Joe. I understand how mental rehearsal can change the brain because you can change your brain just by thinking about it. I understand neuroplasticity, but how does it change the body? Well, I did an experiment where they took a group of people and they had them pull a spring for an hour a day for 4 weeks. These were college sophomores, obviously. And then they took another group of people and they had them come and mentally rehearse pulling the spring in their mind for 4 weeks. And all they had to do was visualize it and say, harder, stronger, harder. And they kept doing it over and over again. Well, at the end of the experiment, the people who pulled the spring had a 30% increase in muscle strength. Well, that makes sense, right? You put a load on a muscle, you take that muscle through a range of motion, there's resistance, the muscle fibers tear, and they grow back bigger. That's a genetic change. You with me? That's accommodation. But the people who mentally rehearsed pulling the spring, at the end of 4 weeks, had a 22% increase in muscle strength, but they never lifted a finger. In other words, their body looked like they'd been experiencing the event ahead of the actual event, and there were physical changes in their body to look like they have been exercising their finger for 4 weeks. Now their body is in the future. You with me? So if there are physical changes by thought alone in your brain and body to look like the experience has already happened, then the experience has already happened. How many people understand? It's evidence in your body. Now that's when you can relax. And everybody in your life could be stressing out and you could just be connected to that destiny. How many people are with me? And that's called peace. Would you agree? So then, the process of mental rehearsal means then that you are going to imagine yourself living in that future, the choices you're going to make, the behaviors you're going to demonstrate, what you're going to do with all your wealth, how it's going to feel, what experiences you're going to create, who you're going to contribute to, how you're going to make a difference. And if you keep revisiting that same future every single day, would you agree, just like the piano players, it's going to look like it's happened here already? And would you agree then, in order for your muscles to be 22% stronger, you had to signal some new genes in new ways just by thought alone? Would you agree with that? But if you're thinking the same way, making the same choices, having the same experiences, same behaviors, same emotions, then you keep the same genes on and the other genes off, and now you just got a limited amount of genes and you're headed for your genetic destiny. You with me? So then, research paper after research paper after research paper shows that individual genes, one gene can have 35,000 variations on one gene. One gene. So then as you begin to change your internal state and you begin to give thanks before the experience happens and you marry a clear intention with an elevated emotion and you can sustain that for an extended period of time, you're knocking on the receptor site outside of the cell. And the longer you can live in that state, the more you're signaling the gene, and sooner or later that gene turns on and it makes a new protein. And the protein is an expression of life. An expression of life is the expression of health. And all of a sudden, by thought alone, you change the health of your body. Or your body begins to know what abundance is. It knows it because it becomes automatic. It becomes second nature. How many people are with me? You with me, yes? Yes. So then, when we do our advanced workshop in February in Colorado, I want to do epigenetic testing on a group of students. I want to know if we're signaling new genes in new ways. I already know that, but I want to produce the evidence. Why? Because once you see that it happens, you'll assign more meaning to what you're doing. You'll believe it more. Would you not? You just like the maids, you understand what you're doing. So then if you are then emotionally embracing the event before it's made manifest, if the emotion is the end product of an experience, your body will begin to not know the difference between the actual experience in your environment and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. And your body will begin to be signaled emotionally with new genes. So then there's a gene for nobility. Would you agree? There's a gene for honor. Yes? There's a gene for courage. Yes? There's a gene for vitality. Yes? There's a gene for genius. Yes? It's in there because you got 98.5% junk DNA waiting to be used. So then there's a library of potential, a parts list of possibilities. And as you begin to signal the gene in different ways, it begins to change its expression of proteins because a gene makes a protein. So if a group of diabetics can laugh for 1 hour and regulate 23 new genes, if you can take a group of people that are stressed out and you teach them how to meditate and they begin to turn on over 800 genes that stimulates their immune system for health and turn off over 600 genes that have to do with the stress response, they're changing their internal state just by doing something differently. If you take a group of men with cancer and you have them simply change the way they think, how they act, and what they eat, just make different choices. They regulate 200 new genes. This is science. So then you can signal the gene ahead of the environment because, they used to say, genes create disease. Remember that? And then they said, oh, we made a mistake. That's actually not true. It's the environment that signals the gene that creates the disease. Well, how come two factory workers can work side by side, both exposed to the same carcinogenic chemical, and one gets cancer and the other doesn't? Certainly there's some internal environment that's greater than the external environment, and that internal environment is still the external environment of the cell. How many people are with me? So then when you change your state of being, I want you to understand, and there's research to show this, that in one meditation you regulate new genes. And if you keep knocking on the door, knocking on the door, knocking on the door, sooner or later you're going to program the gene to turn on. And when that happens, you've planted the seed, and your autonomic nervous system will take over and do it for you.